Hi guys, Karen and Stacey here, the calf experts. We run a Facebook page called the Calf Experts where we love putting lots of information up there for calf rearers. And we also are the calf experts at Farmlands. So we thought we'd jump on today and give you guys some tips and tricks to get off to a flying start when it comes to your calves this season.
And one of those tips and tricks is actually working out what calf feed is the best one to purchase, because it's a bit of a minefield out there, isn't it, Stacey?
It is, yeah. We get lots of questions about what is the best way to decide what calf feed to go with for the season. And it can be really confusing if you're not a nutritionist yourself, which I'm guessing you might not be. It becomes quite tricky to really figure out which calf feed is best. And we've got some little hacks up our sleeve. So one of those tips is it's all about quality. So you get what you pay for generally when it comes to a calf feed. And if it's cheaper, it's usually cheaper for a reason, and it's got some filler feeds in there. So things like palm kernel and copra are really high fiber feeds, and we don't want them filling up our calf feed. We want our biggest component of our calf feed to be grain and good quality protein so that we're getting some good rumen development and also supporting good muscle growth.
It's all about building an athlete, really, isn't it, Stacey? We
It
want some
is.
lean tissue and some really good structural growth there.
Exactly. We want those rumens developing, and that comes from the starch in the calf feed, and we want to be growing them really, really nicely. So one of the hacks we can look out for, guys, is a calf feed that has a high fat level. So if a calf feed has a fat level over about 4%, this is actually telling us that there's some things in that calf feed in there that shouldn't really be in there. So some of the high fat raw ingredients we can find turning up in calf feeds are things like lollies, chocolate, bakery waste, biscuit waste, even peanuts we've seen in calf feed before. All of those things drive up the fat level, but fat isn't what we're looking for in a hard feed. We're looking for that nice high starch level, and a high fat level in a calf feed is not going to do you any service when it comes to developing those rumens of your animals.
We've also got to make sure that it's full of the right balance in vitamins and minerals and does have a coccidiostat. Isn't that right, Stacey?
Exactly. That's it. That's right. Most calf hard feed these days will have a coccidiostat, but one thing that's not in every calf feed these days is B vitamins. So B vitamins are included in the premix of a calf feed, and B vitamins are really important for supporting the growth and health of our young animals. So make sure that whatever calf feed you're using, it has B vitamins added in there. So for us, the calf feeds that we really trust, that we know the formulation of, and that we have all the trust in the world of, the NRM or Reliance calf feeds. And if you go for either of these brands, which you can find at your Farmland stores, you're going to be making a really nutritionally sound choice when it comes to that calf feed for your animals. They're low fat, they're high starch, they've got everything in there, the vitamins, the minerals, the coccidiostat. So it's a really no-brainer choice when it comes to making that hard feed decision. So making that choice of hard feed is really important, but also we've got to get it into the calves, and we've got to get it into them as early as possible. And that's easier said than done sometimes. But again, we have some really good tricks up our sleeve, don't we, Karen, when it comes to stimulating early hard feed intake. So Karen, do you want to take it away with some top tips for hard feed intake?
I've just been around the traps over the last 2 weeks out on the road, checking up on calf rearers out there and helping come up with some tips and tricks to get those calves started. So pretty much the earlier you start, the better. It's all about training that calf, and their whole life they're going to be trained to for new experiences and taste new things. So we're going to start off with just a small amount, and preferably pretty much from day 2. So the sooner we get them started on those pellets, the better. And then we've got this other sort of trick that we can use straight after the milk feed. So when they've drunk their milk, they're quite often still searching or looking, and they have a suck reflex that can go for about 20 minutes. So while they're searching and looking, we don't want them sucking on each other or you or each other's navels. We actually can entertain them by popping a few pellets into their mouth or starter feed. And within about 4 to 6 days, they actually get the idea of going from the milk feed to the pellet. But you need room. If you don't supply enough room with your troughs, just remember the herd animals. We've got to actually provide them with enough space where more than just 1 or 2 animals can eat. That, if there's 12 in a pen, that at least 8 of them can go and actually eat all at once.
I think the key thing is just why wait? Why wait to get hard feed in the system? Get it in early. We're teaching them, they're young, they need to learn. So if we get in early, it means that we can start creating that habit. I guess another thing to think about, Karen, is sometimes we find calf rearers use a lot of these powders that we see in pens, so things like OptiCalf or sodium bentonite. Those things are absolutely fine to use in your system if you find them helpful, but the key thing is to never mix them in with your hard feed. Always put them in a separate container. If we add those powders onto the calf feed, it takes away the choice for our animals, and they can often slobber all over the calf feed because that powder's there, and it actually will put other calves off consuming that hard feed.
That's completely right, Stacey. Yeah, keeping your powders in a separate container, but also having reachable, clean, reticulated water. So water that's constantly available to the calf. Calves can't actually eat lots of things if they can't drink or have that plenty of fresh, readily available water. So it's important that you're cleaning your troughs every day. You're cleaning your meal troughs as well, so they're not getting full of bacteria that can stale the calf feed, and just replenishing every day a little bit more that matches their appetite. That's a biggie.
You've got to remember that they've got all of that yummy milk in the system. You know, we're feeding them lots of this yummy milk. So if we put out hard feed and it goes yucky because rats have been all over it or birds have pooed all over it, we're all of a sudden making that food quite unattractive for them when they've got lovely milk. Why would they eat stale, horrible calf feed that's been sitting there for a week and has gone off? So we've got to make it attractive. We've got to put it out every day fresh, little bits, and often match it to their intake, and that will keep them actually wanting to eat that hard feed.
The next thing with top tips is offering some fibre. So calves, for their rumen development as well as their own calf comfort and learning how to sort of ruminate, having a little bit of long bits of straw or just plain hay is great. But we just got to make sure that we've contained it really well so it's firmly packed down. They can only nibble at little amounts because that rumen's only tiny, and so when we put in lots and lots of fibre, that can sort of stop that sort of growth. So just remember, yes, have some straw available or some poorer quality hay, but just firmly pack it down.
Yeah, we don't want them gorging on the fibre source. Remember, we want them eating the hard feed. They have a little rumen at that stage that we're still trying to grow. So if we stuff that full of a really bulky, high fibre feed, it just takes ages to break down and they'll eat less hard feed.
Out of all that information that we've just given you, probably the big thing is just remember you're forming a habit, and it's either going to be a good habit or a bad habit. So just remember that.
So we've got a few questions, guys, that we wanted to answer for you today. The first question that's come in is, what calf feeds contain palm kernel?
The only calf feed at the NRM and Reliance calf feed range that contains palm kernel is what we call Sweet 16, and it's designed for after the calf is weaned. So there's 15% palm kernel in there. So that's a really good feed to bring in as a teenager, not in those early days. So that's the NRM Sweet 16 with palm kernel.
All the other feeds, calf feeds in the NRM and Reliance range don't contain palm kernel, so you can really trust that they do not have palm kernel, so they're perfect for that pre-weaning time. So the other question that came in was around genetically modified ingredients in calf feed. So probably when it comes to genetically modified ingredients in calf feed, the most common ingredient we might find that could be genetically modified is soybean meal, which is used as a protein source in calf feed. We need protein in calf feed because it helps to grow us these beautiful calves with really good muscle development. And soybean meal is a great source of protein. It has a really nice balance of amino acids in there, which support our calves. But we have found that there's a few more farmers out there these days that are looking for genetically modified free options. And that's usually because their end processor or their end consumer is demanding that of them. And for that reason, we've developed a new product in our range at Farmlands, and we've got a non-GMO option. It's called Reliance Kiwi Calf Non-GMO 19%, and that is a really awesome option to go for, guys, if you are looking for a GMO-free calf feed. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and listening to our top tips. Hopefully it's given you a few ideas to implement for your calf rearing system so that you can get off to a flying start this spring with Farmlands.